Welcome back to the weekend with Anthony Opperman. It's a festive day in Richmond as thousands of Richmonders line Broad Street for the annual Christmas parade. I'm not sure if festive is the most accurate word to describe the atmosphere at Stillwater, Oklahoma. Probably more like Bedlam as number 3 Oklahoma State gets ready to host number 10 Oklahoma. I wanted to bring in an expert on the Bedlam Rivalry, and everyone that I've known that goes to Stillwater always comes back with this shirt that says Eskimo Joe's. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome into the weekend the president of Eskimo Joe's there in Stillwater, Oklahoma, Stan Clark. Stan, thank you so much for taking the time this morning.
Well, it is my joy, Anthony. I can't even believe that anybody in Richmond, Virginia could give a heck about what's going on in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So you honor me with your call, and I'm thrilled to talk about Oklahoma State University and Stillwater, Oklahoma, and certainly Eskimo Joe's.
Well, give everyone a little bit of background on Eskimo Joe's and its connection to Stillwater and OSU.
Well, I'd be honored. I opened Eskimo Joe's at age 22, 2 months after I graduated from Oklahoma State with a business degree. And in the early days, we were, as I love to refer to it, we were nothing more than a beer joint, just a little hangout half a block east of the campus. And from that less than 900 square feet of beginnings, as we're completing some expansion today, the complex is more like 30,000 square feet, and we seat we're approaching 300 guests, and we have a retail footprint in excess of 4,000 feet. You mentioned the Eskimo Joe's T-shirt. That's really been our claim to fame. We sold Joe's T-shirts from day one, and today they're really a well-known brand across our state and certainly this part of the country, and hopefully now in Richmond. And just to get in a shameless plug right at the top, 1-800-256-JOES. You too can be sporting the famous smile seen around the world, Eskimo Joe's.
And talk about, too, the connection to Oklahoma State, and I think it starts right at the top with yourself, a proud OSU alum.
Well, I certainly am. I came over here in 1971, went through the College of Business. I always kid myself I got a gen ed degree because that had the least math requirement, but so I have a general business degree, and a couple of weeks after graduation, a buddy of mine says, "Hey, Clark, I'm going to open a bar." And I go, "Hey, file, I'll go in partners with you." And, kind of the rest is history, as they say. 10 minutes later, we shook hands with the guy that owned the place, and so we started a little beer joint in July of '75. Fast forward, we've been named by the Sporting News as one of the greatest post-game hangouts, and the place definitely has a little bit of aura around it. In 1990, then President Bush, number 41, said, "I wish Barbara could be with me here today. She did tell me to get a beer and some cheese fries over at Eskimo Joe's," at the 1990 commencement address in then Lewis Field on our campus. So that kind of made our cheese fries our signature item, to say the least. But that's probably my proudest moment, when you get a standing president to give you a plug. That helps. Had about 40,000 of my best friends there for that for that commencement ceremony. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, so we've been blessed with just a little bit of notoriety here and there, but this is our 37th football season to serve the Oklahoma State community, and we couldn't be more proud of course, where the Cowboys stand at this point at number 3 in the BCS polls.
Well, that's what we're going for on this show. Definitely sounds like Eskimo Joe's is connected to the Oklahoma State community, and certainly the community there in Stillwater. And if that's not convincing enough, we'll actually tweet a T-shirt design of Eskimo Joe and OSU mascot Pistol Pete. I know that's something that you guys are definitely excited about. Ops83, OPPS83 is where we'll tweet that picture for everybody listening to be able to see it. But, Stan, just to kind of go into it a little bit more, how big is the Bedlam rivalry there in the state of Oklahoma?
Well, it's just outrageous. Literally what you do, they built an industry around this Bedlam game in terms of talk radio. I mean, it goes on all year. And, all year long there's all this back and forth about, what's getting ready to happen on Saturday. So it's absolutely huge. I'm certain there's others similar across the country. Perhaps last weekend's Iron Bowl, with Auburn and Alabama might be on par. But it's pretty outrageous. Until the Thunder came along just a couple of years ago, we never had any professional sports at all in our state. So it's always been about the University of Oklahoma and then Oklahoma State University. And, as much as I'm going to have to eat crow on this, and thankfully there won't be Oklahoma listeners here anyway, the University of Oklahoma is one of the, big league brands when it comes to college football. There's no question about it. But I'll tell you what, we're sneaking up on them. And thanks to our good buddy Boone Pickens and all that he's invested, and a great administration and some dynamite coaches, our fan base is growing. And certainly our stature is growing in college football, as evidenced by our being as high as number 2. So, it's just a very, very exciting time, unlike anything I've ever seen in the 40 years I've lived in Stillwater.
Stan Clark, the president of Eskimo Joe's in Stillwater, Oklahoma, also a proud Oklahoma State alum. And, Stan, you talk about the fact that OSU's kind of sneaking up on Oklahoma and how Oklahoma has been this big national brand. Certainly that heightens, I think, this game going into this weekend because it's Oklahoma State, not necessarily Oklahoma, that certainly has the big chips out on the table, so to speak. Talk about the atmosphere coming into this game this year and how it might be different from years past, considering that Oklahoma State still, in theory, has a chance to play for a national championship.
Well, whether or not we get to do that or not, I think around here beating Oklahoma makes for a good year any year. So that is absolutely our first goal. There's no doubt about that. I don't think there's any doubt our guys are focused on that. And I don't have any doubt that the Sooners are going to come in and give us their very best shot, too. Unfortunately, as that series goes, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we've played, I think this is the 106th meeting, and we've only won 16 times. So they are dominant. I just have to be honest. The history of it doesn't bode well for us. So if we beat Oklahoma this year, not only do we get to at least go to the Fiesta Bowl, if not the national championship game, which we've never been to a BCS Bowl, just beating Oklahoma's a big deal. And it'll be a big deal if we get her done this year, that's for sure.
Well, I'm going to go hypothetical, and I know the numbers in recent history doesn't stack up quite as well for OSU, but if Oklahoma State were to win that game tonight, should they play in the national championship game, and why?
Well, even our coach has said, if he were a voter, he'd probably vote for Alabama to be number 2. Their only loss, 3 points in an overtime. I mean, come on. So I don't know. We lost to Iowa State, not quite the same as losing to LSU. So, I mean, in all honesty, put all my emotion aside, I don't think it's going to happen. Certainly watching ESPN Sunday night, didn't sound like any of those prognosticators think it's going to happen. Again, if we beat Oklahoma, I'm happy as I can possibly be. That'll be wonderful. I'd love to go to the Fiesta Bowl and play for a BCS. And actually, I love the matchup. It looks like we would face Stanford out there, and I think that would be a killer matchup. Now, I will say this, I think Brandon Whedon deserves a lot more consideration than he's gotten, and unfortunately our loss at Iowa State, he went from number 1 in the Heisman, prognosticators' view to completely off the charts, probably won't even get invited. And if more people had a chance to see the way this guy can throw a football around, I can get on his soapbox probably more than I can actually get on a soapbox and say we ought to be playing for a national title. There were certainly extenuating circumstances that I think contributed to our loss at Iowa State, and I'll just leave my comment at that. But it was a very, very dark time in our little community, and I think our kids were affected drastically by that. Again, you have to play the game, and we lost it. So we have one loss. I just hope we have one loss at the end of today, and that we're going to the Fiesta Bowl. And I'll be the happiest man on the planet.
Well, Stan, I got to be honest with you, and this is not just because you and I are talking here and having this conversation, but my belief is that if Oklahoma State were to win this game, even with the Iowa State loss, I think they're more deserving just because of the fact that they would have won their conference at that point. I'm a big stickler for that, but, again, maybe another conversation for
No, I'm with you. You're right. I was wrong. What he said. Oklahoma State, national championship game. Yeah. I'm all in.
Stan Clark, the president of Eskimo Joe. Stan, our time is running short, unfortunately, but I know you threw one plug in at the beginning, but I'll let you throw another plug in about Eskimo Joe's. Where can folks in Richmond find out more about that hoppin' little joint in Stillwater?
Well, of course, it's www.eskimojoes.com. You'll find out everything, lots of history there, and of course, all of our product mix, which is a breadth of Eskimo Joe's logoed items. And I just have to say thank you so much for thinking of us and letting us tell a little bit of our story on your great program. And I just want to invite everybody to Stillwater, where you can eat at Joe's. And when you put on an Eskimo Joe's shirt, you're always putting on a smile, because Eskimo Joe has the biggest smile you've ever seen. So, and by the way, the piece you'll see if you tweet the number that was mentioned, that's our big Cowboy Up design, and it's an officially licensed, co-branded piece with the Oklahoma State University and Eskimo Joe's. And that's one of my proudest moments right there, when Oklahoma State University comes calling and say, hey, would you be willing to co-brand with us? That was the highest compliment I could have gotten on my 36-and-a-half-year career here in Stillwater. So very proud of that, and proud to be a part of your show today.
Well, I'm not sure there's anyone more qualified to speak on the Bedlam Rivalry, at least from the Oklahoma State's perspective, than our guest, Stan Clark, the president of Eskimo Joe's. Stan, thank you again. Look forward to visiting, and I hope the boys at Cross Canadian Ragweed haven't gotten too big for their britches.
Well, they're awful darn good. We're very proud of their success, you know that. Okay, well, I guess the last thing I can say is thank you, Anthony, and go Cowboys!
Stan, I hope you guys have a big party there in Stillwater, and I know it's the biggest post-game party normally after Oklahoma State games, and I hope it's an even bigger one with a victory over Oklahoma. Again, Stan Clark, president of Eskimo Joe's in Stillwater. We've got more coming up on the weekend. Stay tuned.
The Weekend with Anthony Opperman continues next on Sports Radio 910.